Imitation really is built into human nature. It's one of our most used and powerful learning tools. I mean, think of all the things that you've learned by imitation. Even just think of the current work assignment you have or your job. How much of it did you learn by just watching someone else do that work? Children imitate their parents when they learn how to speak, think, eat, and even walk just like them. Children even learn to imitate the very subtle accents of their parents, and those accents get passed on from one generation to the next. I've had people say to me, "John, you walk just like your father." I have no idea how that happened. Sometimes we imitate others and we don't even know that we're doing it. Have you ever been listening to the radio and a few hours later you're humming or singing a song and you realize that that was the very song that was on the radio several hours ago? Imitation is such a part of the human learning experience that we're doing it all the time. We can't turn it off. Imitation is also used by animals to learn their skills by watching their parents. I saw the cutest example of this when we were watching a herd of elephants in Zambia. And the mother elephant and the baby elephant were walking by, and the baby elephant was trying to grab some grass and tear it off and put it in his mouth like his mother was. But every time he did it, he ended up with nothing. But he was sure watching his mom, how she was doing it, and seeing how he could imitate and get some of that for himself. Well, since imitation is such a powerful learning tool and has such an effect on the person we are and the person that we are to become, we need to be very careful about who we choose to imitate. Who do you choose to imitate? Well, see, who we choose to imitate determines who we want to become. That's why there's so much caution in the scriptures about our association, because who we choose to imitate rubs off on us, so to speak, in subtle ways that we might not even notice right away. Notice the counsel given to the Israelites about not imitating the nations around them. If you look at Exodus chapter 23 and verse 24, notice the counsel that Jehovah gave to the Israelites. He said, "You must not bow down to their gods or be persuaded to serve them, and you must not imitate their practices." And he continues this thought in Deuteronomy chapter 18 and verse 9. Deuteronomy 18, verse 9, it says, "When you have entered into the land that Jehovah your God is giving you, you must not learn to imitate the detestable practices of those nations." Well, what happened when the Israelites chose to imitate the nations around them, to ignore the advice Jehovah had given them? Well, let's look at 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 15. 2 Kings 17, 15. It says, "They continued rejecting his regulations and his covenant that he had made with their forefathers and his reminders that he had given to warn them, and they kept following worthless idols." And notice what happened to them when they did that, and became worthless themselves, imitating the nations all around them that Jehovah had commanded them not to imitate. So if we imitate worthless things, what's going to happen to us? We're going to be worthless. If we fast forward to Christian times, we can see that the same advice was given to us. If we look at 3 John and verse 11, very straightforward advice. "Beloved one, do not imitate what is bad, but imitate what is good. The one who does good originates with God. The one who does bad has not seen God." Well, the message is clear. If we want to see God or have a good relationship with Jehovah, then we need to imitate what is good. And our text for today in Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 1 really says it about as simply and clearly as we can: become imitators of God. So Jehovah's telling us in our text for today, imitate me. So if someone asks us, who do you choose to imitate? We follow the advice of Ephesians 5:1. We want to imitate Jehovah. Well, how can we imitate Jehovah? Well, first, one way is by reading the Bible. We have learned love, hope, faith, loyalty, and so many other fine qualities by reading about how Jehovah wants us to conduct ourselves. I mean, look at the law that Jehovah gave to the nation of Israel. We can learn so much about how Jehovah feels about being honest, clean, fair, just. Or in different Bible examples, we see Jehovah's patience in dealing with Jonah and his mercy in dealing with the Ninevites. Reading the Bible gives us a very clear picture of our perfect God, Jehovah, we worship, and he gives us the perfect role model to imitate. When we read the Bible and continually ask ourselves, what do I learn about Jehovah and how can I learn to imitate him? That really is like us keeping our eye on Jehovah with our mind's eye and watching what he's doing, and we're imitating him. Another way that we can imitate Jehovah is by imitating others who are imitating him. Jehovah's used the pages of the Bible to give us real-life stories of people that we can imitate. I mean, we've never met Abraham and Sarah, but don't you feel like you know them? Sure, there's much more that we can learn about these beautiful spiritual people in the New World, but what is laid out in the Scriptures is enough for us to imitate the beautiful examples they set for us. Or what about Jesus? We've never met Jesus, but by reading the Bible accounts, don't you feel like you know him and that you know how he would react and think about certain situations? The Apostle Paul simply explained this. In 1 Corinthians 11:1, he said, "Become imitators of me as I am of Christ." So we have Jesus Christ as an example of imitating his Father. The Apostle Paul was imitating Christ. Now, the Apostle Paul, of course, wasn't saying, imitate the way I give my talks, imitate the way I move, imitate the way I walk or say things. But in Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 7, he stressed what it was that we were to imitate about others. Hebrews 13:7, remember those who are taking the lead among you, who have spoken the word of God to you, and as you contemplate how their conduct turns out, imitate their faith. So we're to imitate the faith, an example that others set in imitating Jesus and imitating Jehovah. Now, to illustrate the choice that we have of who we're going to imitate, I'd like you to imagine in your mind two big, huge machines with lots of parts. Now, one machine is run by Jehovah and Jesus Christ, and the other machine is run by Satan and the world. And I want to imagine that you're a part on the mechanic's bench. When Jehovah goes to pick you up and look at you and see, do you fit as a part in his organization? Well, we can if we imitate him and other spiritual people who are useful to Jehovah. We can become a useful part of his beautiful organization. If we imitate Jehovah, then Satan, if he goes over to that bench and picks it up and tries to put it into his machine, it's not going to fit anywhere. We are no part of his world or organization. I mean, how sad it would be if we shaped and imitated ourselves after the world, and when Satan picked us up, we fit right in with his machine and organization. So, who do you choose to imitate? We choose to imitate Jehovah. We want to be just like him when we grow up. How can we imitate Jehovah? By getting to know him personally through reading the Bible and imitating others that are imitating him.